stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everybody. Happy to see everyone here. We have a pretty busy agenda tonight, and I know Mr. Meinke probably has some updates for us. So I want to start by offering up public comment to anyone who'd like to address the board related to the agenda items that we have this evening. If you'd like to address the board, please stand, state your name, and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Anyone? Okay, there will be another opportunity later in the meeting. All right, with that, we will move on to the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion for approval. Support. Alicia, Brian, any comments or questions? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Mr. Meinke, it's all yours.
Thank you. It has been a tremendously whirlwind of a start to our summer. We had a beautiful graduation ceremony, and I appreciate all of the board members being there in attendance and just celebrating our kids. It was a really special day for the community, and it was a lot of fun to be a part of that. So congratulations, of course, to our class of 2021. And, it was just a really high point, I think, to end the year and head into the summer. Literally the next day, we had contractors, dozens of contractors in the middle school and high school starting demolition, moving things around. If you drive by our middle school and high school at different spots of the building, you'd be surprised even from the outside, a lot of the progress that's being made just in some of the earth moving that's being done. They're starting footings over at the middle school for the STEM additions, and also behind the Performing Arts Center, they're starting the high school wing addition there, which is substantial. And so it's neat to see that getting done. I was in the high school today, and they actually had all the ceiling grid already removed, and they're moving at light speed. So they've been chomping at the bit, ordering materials, getting ready to go. So it's really great to see them started. I wanted to also let you know that we will have a new student board representative who will be joining us in August. I talked with Mr. Kitchen just this past week, and he has informed me that their committee has selected a new representative, and we will introduce her to you in August. So I'm excited to meet her and get her up to speed as well. I wanted to talk a little bit about two additional pieces. One, we have a little bit of a conflict on July 14th, which is our next board meeting date. Several people are not able to be in attendance for that meeting. So as a point of kind of logistics, I'm wondering if it's possible, if it will work with the majority of your schedules, if we push that board meeting to the 21st. And so we would take the committee meetings and the board meeting for that, basically the board meetings that would be on the week of the 12th, and move them to the 21st. So it would be committee meetings on the 20th and the 19th, and then actual board meeting on the 21st. So
You want feedback now, Ben?
yeah, if that's possible.
I do not have an objection.
I'm open to that idea.
I am as well.
You okay, Jack? Okay. Do you think you could make that work, Chuck? I'm looking at okay. July 21st would be our board meeting, and the 19th would be our committee. Yes. So as long as you're not, if you don't object to that, then we would have to make those postings this next week and make sure that Sue gets that up on the website. That will give us a little bit of reprieve from some of the things we're going to talk about tonight, which are more timeline sensitive. I'd like to talk a little bit about, just from my perspective, give you an update on a product called Board Book. And so I'm going to show you my screen here. assuming that it will come up. Do I need to extend the desktop? Okay. I just extended. Now I'm going to go mirror. There it goes. A lot smaller, but. Okay, this is real small on my screen, but I'm going to try to make this work. So if you're on our website and you go over to the district page and you go down to the Board of Education, you'll note that there is an area there that says Board Policies. And I know it's really hard to see on that screen for whatever reason, the resolutions. Yeah, I can definitely zoom in, so good call on that. So anyway, the board policies, if you click here, you'll notice that before that took you to a Neola page. This now takes us to our updated policies. So for the public and also for any of you that are looking for, a particular policy, you can click on the folder and it will open up the subsequent policy that's there. So that in fact is in place. I do want to talk for a second about what it could do. And we had this working really well earlier, and we didn't have this big issue, but Genesee County, we're one of the first districts in Genesee County to move to this product, but I'm going to show you Forest Hills Public Schools. Forest Hills is a school district out on the west side of the state. And what they have done is they've used that same screen that I just showed you for their policies. They also have the TRUM policies. They also have Board Book. And when you go on to their district page, and you go to the Board of Education, and you click on their bylaws and policies, it takes you to a real similar looking page. So on this right side, you can see all of their policies and everything that they have. The one thing that Board Book Premier does is it allows for the meeting agendas to be posted and all of the minutes to be posted in a consistent place. Now, we meet all of the required guidelines by the Open Meetings Act and everything of what we're currently doing, but this creates a platform for us to be able to have everything in one place. So if you look at, this is their public site, so if you click on the agenda, it'll pull up their agenda right there. There are attachments, for the different parts of their agenda. It has, obviously, the minutes of the meeting, from a previous meeting can be logged right there. So all of these things are essentially, Board Book allows for all of the meetings, agendas, and minutes to be held here, as well as the policies. So I'm just looking for a little feedback. Do you like what we're currently doing? It's not going to cost us any more money because we already have a Board Book subscription. So the question would be, would you like Sue and I to explore making this a little bit more streamlined, making this a little bit more comprehensive for you guys and for the public to see these things?
I'll take the first stab and say absolutely.
Okay.
I think our website is extremely clunky, very hard to navigate, and even those of us on the board looking for things, if we have difficulty, I think the public has even more difficulty. So I feel that anything that's comprehensive and already outlined like that is worth our time and investment.
Okay.
I would absolutely agree.
Okay. So, essentially what we can do is we will move forward then on our end, and then Sue and I will figure out, how to do, there'll be, a little bit of training for you guys to be able to see, how to log into the different areas. We're going to continue to maintain the Google folders and things like that for the board documents, but you'll be able to, this will have a functionality as well with that we'll be able to talk to. So
Will this link to YouTube too? Can you put the YouTube sites on here? I know we can go to YouTube, but why wouldn't we have the YouTube site on there next to the minutes so people could actually see what they're looking at? Because the minutes are a very, very small snapshot of what we talk about. Sometimes we miss some of the minutes. So I would like, my only suggestion is that YouTube goes on there wherever the minutes are at. So people can look at the minutes and then flip over. And our tech guy should be able to do that and put YouTube next to it so the public could see it.
Yeah,
All the
that's a good
transparency that we want, okay?
Yeah.
That's all I ask. Thank you.
So I'll see if we can put that link right next to, where those are. And, I don't know what the limitations are, but we should be able to make that happen, I would think. All in one place. Yep. Yep, for sure. So I will have more information on that to come in future meetings, and I'll be able to share with you what we find out as we kind of go through that training. I also am going to be sending you a video presentation. I had an opportunity to go out to Gaines Elementary School this past week. I know at the last board meeting I shared that I would be heading out there. I know Jessica had a chance to be there as well. We're going to be holding another town hall out at Gaines, planning to have that on July 19th at 5:30. If any of you are available, I know that would be a great opportunity for you to come and just visit with the community, have the conversations there. The conversations, to just give you my report on the meeting, I'll share with you the financial projections that I went over with them. And again, these are based on, just like anytime you make a projection, these are based on things that look like they would happen. I basically went out there with the intent to try and get feedback, get ideas. I'll share some of those with you. There were 5 scenarios that I shared with the community out there. One of them was if we were to fully staff the building, meaning that we would have 1 teacher for every grade level, that would essentially, based on the numbers that we're projecting for next year, about 120 students, that would result in an operating loss at the building, of course. Scenario 2 was running mostly split classrooms. We've had parents that have not been super happy with that in the past. We anticipate losing about 10 students if we decide to make that happen again, and we still would be running at a deficit. As you think about scenarios 3, which would be to run it as an upper elementary school, there wasn't any excitement around that. That would start to get you more into the, black, at least at the building level, not necessarily that it's financially neutral. And then scenario 5, which was the opposite end of the spectrum, would be to close the building altogether. Scenario 4 was to close the building, but to open a community education center, which would be essentially running a, during the day and after hours community education program, as well as GSRP and Head Start programs that are self-sufficient and fully funded. So you can see there's significant, price financial impact on those things. But I did talk out there, finances aren't the only reason to make a decision. They had a lot of ideas. We've collected those ideas. We're going to share some of those as well as the video with you this next week. If you're able to come on the 19th at 5:30, on July 19th at 5:30, that would be great to see you there. I will say that one of the things that I heard consistently was they want a date when there's going to be a decision that's made. And of course, I could not give that to them. They wanted to know that, and they also wanted the district to commit to a certain number of years where they would not close the building and so on and so forth. My suggestion would be that as a board, we would schedule maybe a special meeting sometime in August, and you as a board could deliberate, give the public plenty of time, plenty of notice. You would deliberate that decision. And I think the decision could be, it doesn't have to be one of these 5. These are just, 5 possibilities. But the decision could be anything ranging from we're not going to do anything with this right now, to we're going to do something, but we want to make a decision by a certain date, or you're going to make a decision sooner than later. And I think for their sake and also for the sake of district planning purposes and staffing, it'll be, helpful for us to kind of know. And again, this is, something that you as a board can kind of think through, and we can talk about it again, at our upcoming board meeting. But I'd like to have one more town hall out there to, give people an opportunity to show up that didn't get a chance. So that, Madam President, concludes my report.
Well, thank you, sir. Any questions for Ben before we move on?
I've got, actually, never mind.
Okay, sorry.
Chuck, Mike,
Yeah, that's my wingman on both sides. She put me a note up and I got shot down already. I don't have much on it. It was a great meeting. The public was very nice. Everybody was sincere and polite, and it worked back and forth. And there was a lot of great ideas that Ben put out, the 5 scenarios, which I appreciate, not just having 1 or 2 options. The only thing is, and I think we discussed this there, is that we've got a lot of business to take care of the next couple months, especially with that. And maybe a survey, and I think somebody already mentioned it, maybe one of the board members suggested it, or Ben did, or somebody did on the board, that we send out a survey and see how many people are really interested in going there with that K-5 program, and see if we can't boost that, and that might solve the whole problem. I don't recall, somebody said it down at that end of the table. And I would like to still pursue that. If, in the meantime, I don't know if you can do it, Ben, or have somebody do it, or Rod do it, to send out a survey and see if there's an interest of, maybe a couple extra 100 people, or somebody say, hey, I'd rather not do the split schooling. I'd rather, if I have that option, go to K-5, which I know you did that already, but just as a refresher, and that might help save that school.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was it. Mike
Good
off.
idea.
Signing off.
Thanks, Chuck. I do have one question, Ben, and I'm sorry I couldn't make that meeting. But you may have mentioned it already, and I may have missed it. I apologize. But how did we come up with a 35 pupil loss? Was that an estimate?
It's a complete estimate.
Okay.
We believe that if the building closes, and, certainly when we were speaking out there, several of the parents voiced that, right? I mean, if the building closes, there would be a number of students who go to Byron or choose not to come to one of our other elementary schools. We do believe that there will be a large number that do, but there will also be a large number that don't. And that's part of the, it's difficult to quantify what that is. You're making a total assumption,
Okay.
on that.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you, and thanks for the update. I know this has been a very busy time, and I would concur. I want to thank all the staff, all the teams that put together graduation. It was really a very nice event, and probably one of them in my memory that will remain for a very long time. To see the smiles of those students sitting out there who didn't know a few months ago if they were going to have graduation. It was just amazing. So thanks to everybody. You put a great graduation on, and on behalf of the community, thank you. All right, moving on. We do have some board discussion items in front of us, beginning with our all-important 2021 and 21-22 budget discussion.
So at this time, I'm going to ask Mrs. Gray to come on up, and she is going to walk us through our status of our financial state and what we're looking at for next year.
Okay, budget presentation for 21, 22, and also the final budget for 2021. Okay, we're gonna start off with our final budget for 2021. Just an overview, our beginning fund balance, $5,274,034. Estimated revenue, $41,191,672. Estimated expenses at $41,167,775,000, leaving us an estimated operating surplus of $23,897. Estimated ending fund balance for the year at $5,297,931, approximately 12.87% of our total expenditures. Next slide. This is the resolution that's presented to the board for approval. It just recaps breakdown of revenue, and as I said, the total revenue, and then the total expenditures, and the projected ending fund balance. I'm not so good at this clicker thing. Okay. So you guys have seen this kind of comparison spreadsheet several times. On the yellow side, this is a comparison of our 1920 actual data to our final 2021 final budget data. I think it's probably not as good of a comparison as on the blue side, where we're comparing our budget, our last revised budget to our final budget. And the reason I say that is because last year was kind of wonky with COVID. Really, numbers weren't probably very comparable in most areas to where we're at this year. And even looking at next year, this year, the 2021 is going to just be off because of various COVID reasons. So on the blue side, budget comparison, we're comparing total revenue. We're looking at $611,000 difference in revenue increase. Total expenditures are changing. And we'll look at these in a little bit more detail. Total expenditures are also increasing by $549,850. And you can see that we're estimating the change in the fund equity from our previous revision is about $61,000. So we're pretty stable in terms of percentage of fund balance to expenditures from 12.89% to 12.87%. So not a huge bottom line impact from our previous revision. But that doesn't mean that there wasn't much going on. In terms of revenue, this gives us a kind of overview of the breakdowns of the changes that occurred from the previous revision to where we're at right now. So the first area is on local revenue. The total changes, we had a decrease of $163,423, and the majority was due to property taxes. We always have, in the last couple of years, in end of May, early June, we get property tax valuations that decrease. So our property tax collections, obviously go down. And then on the state revenue, which we'll talk about in a minute, it offsets it. So it's not a bad story. It's just in the local revenue, it goes down. Delinquent tax collections up about $41,000. And then we had a few items. We have, due to COVID, we had athletic gate revenue down $19,000, almost $20,000. PAC ticket revenue down, childcare revenue down $35,000, and also building rental revenue down, all due to COVID, unforeseeable during the budget revision. And then we had miscellaneous revenue changes, like settlements, refunds, proctoring fees, construction trades. They raised some dollars, and those were put into our miscellaneous revenue category. And then we also had on the local revenue a decrease on the GISD transportation side. We just had fewer repairs and such because they were running their buses less than we anticipated. So we had fewer repairs that we charged to them. So that's the local revenue. On the state revenue side, we had increases of $556,882. So when the property tax values go down, it's a formula that goes into our state aid calculation, and so our state aid number kicks up. The state makes us whole, and so our property tax value goes down and our state aid revenue goes up. So that's about $150,000. In terms of other state aid areas, we had MIPSR's retirement offset payment adjustment of $247,000. We had a one-time retirement payment forfeiture credit, $33,000. We were just refunded our contributions for people that left the retirement system. We had some special ed funding changes, about $37,000. And then another big area was the GSRP grant. We had some additional funding, about $31,000. On the federal revenue side, we had total changes of about $207,994, and most of it had to do with our consolidated application. At the revision time, we hadn't received approval on our final amendment for our consolidated application, so the Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV changes all were a result of that, which we received approval, I would say, in late January. So Title I was the largest item. It went up about $213,000. We also had ESSER equity funds, which are at revision time, revision 1, were in about 56,000 of them were in the budget for 2021. I took them out because those expenses are related to a social worker that's gonna be, social work positions that are gonna be funded in the summer. So we pulled them out and put them into 21-22. So we're reducing it in the final budget, and we'll see them go back into the 21-22 budget. So our federal revenue, as I said, went up just about $207,000. So total revenue changes, $611,406. This is just a graphic view of our revenue. You can see our state funding represents the largest piece at 76%. Local, 14%, that's like our local tax revenue from townships and the cities. Federal revenue at 9%, mostly grants, and then other at 1%. Okay, so now we'll take a look at expenditures. This is a little bit different view, just dicing up the revenue or the expenditure changes by category, as opposed to talking about them in a function code format. I thought we'll change it up, it's maybe a little less complicated. That's what I'm hoping for. So salaries and benefits, if we look at the final budget, so all of this is comparing the final budget to the revised budget, and we'll talk about the changes. So salary and benefits increased $315,514, or 1.02%. Purchase services decreased $165,208, went down about 4.76%. Contracted services, small increase at $2,142. Supplies increased $158,425, about 4.59% increase. Capital outlay, $93,000 increase, 35.63% increase. Dues and fees, $62,733 increase. And transfers, $74,875 increase, about 44% increase. So our total general fund expenditures increased $549,850. So there's a lot of detail on this page. I'm just gonna highlight some of the reasons for the major changes. So salary and benefits, the total change $315,000, mostly due to the pandemic. Well, we previously called it the hazard pay, but we ended up calling it pandemic additional learning payment. That was $372,000. We had also another large item, teacher resignations after the budget revision resulted in about $167,000 decrease in that line. And then we had some other staffing changes, retirement, severance payments, about $37,000, and then adjustments for teacher overloads and split classrooms, about $48,000. Purchase services changed quite a bit, so I just want to highlight a couple areas. So overall, it decreased $165,000, mostly due to purchase services. Substitutes, about $49,000 decrease. We had overestimated what we were going to have in expenses for subs, so we needed to decrease that expenditure line, those expenditure line items. Our special ed SSPs, we had to increase the budget. We needed to decrease dual enrollment down about $49,000, and just we had unused professional development. We were able to decrease those line items about 35,000. So just various items like that. District postage decreased 19,000. We just didn't send out as many letters, and we did a lot more online emailing and stuff like that. So we were able to decrease that. Supplies, I think that's worth talking about, mentioning a couple items. We had a $158,000 increase. We had some decreases from the buildings supply line items, just they were unable to get some things. They didn't need quite as much. They were in and out of school, so I don't think the supplies were, necessarily in as much as demand as expected, so we were able to decrease those, about 94,000. Decreased professional development supplies, 50,000. We increased the admin building and board meeting supplies just because we needed more stuff because of the new building. We adjusted the copier paper up 10,000. In the previous year, we really didn't make many copies, so this year we had to add to that budget. Maintenance supplies due to PPE expenses and other various maintenance supplies up about 34,000. Transportation supplies went down 107,000. So due to COVID, when we had closures, we didn't have as much fuel. We had bus parts that we just didn't use those supply budgets in the transportation department. So we were able to decrease quite a bit there. Technology, we had an opportunity to have some one-time purchases in the technology department. We have displays in the boardroom. We had servers that we had to buy. We have desktop computers for district-wide use. So a lot of one-time big-ticket items that we were able to add to the technology supply budget. So that was about 128,000. Another big item in the supplies, as I mentioned before, the consolidated application Title I was approved since revision 1. So one of the changes had to do with adding supplies for STEM and parent involvement, and that was quite a bit of money. That was 213,000. So supplies, there was a lot of changes. Capital outlay, we had about $93,000 increase from the previous revision. We bought a lot of one-time items. For the high school, we had the graduation stage and chairs. That was about $61,000. In the maintenance department, we bought an additional aerial lift, but we were also able to reduce the maintenance vehicle capital outlay. And transportation, they bought a new air compressor. That was about $7,600. And then athletics, we had some one-time expenses, some hurdles, some mats, those type of items, one-time expenses. We added to their budget $37,500. And then we also adjusted for the land purchase out of the capital outlay. We reduced it $15,000. We couldn't make that purchase happen this year, so we reduced the budget knowing that it wasn't going to happen. Dues and fees, we increased the budget about $62,000. We had state aid note interest expense that we were able to decrease nearly $30,000 because we didn't have a state aid note this year, so we could reduce that interest expense. We had to increase our Michigan Tax Tribunal refunds, $78,000. We had to increase our summer tax collection fees. We had a bill from one of the townships. They billed us last year in July, but this year the bill for summer tax collection was dated May, so that was about $18,000. Outgoing transfers, we saw an increase in the budget, $74,000. We had various items going on. We had virtual learning, tuition paid to other districts, increase of $15,000. We paid for instructional coaches to the GISD. That was a $10,000 increase. Our transportation payment to the GISD for special ed transportation, we ended up having some expenses that we didn't anticipate early on, so that was a $40,000 increase. So all in all, our expenditures increased $549,850. So the next slide gives us a view by object code, which we just talked about in terms of object code. So salary and benefits total about 76% of our budget. Purchase services, 8%. Contracted services, 5%. Supplies, 9%. Capital outlay, 1%. And other, also 1%. So salary and benefits continues to be near the 80% mark. If we kind of dissect the expenditures by function code, our instruction is the largest item at 57%. So that'd be like all the classroom teachers and staff, supplies. And then you have pupil support services, 14%. General support services at 11%. That's executive admin, business office, board. Operations at 8%. Transportation, 4%. Central services, which is HR and technology, at 3%. Athletics at 2%. Community services at 1%. Oops. Moving on to the food service. So final budget for food service, the beginning fund balance, $722,602. Estimated revenue, $1,944,915. Estimated expenses, $2,225,227. Operating loss, $280,312. Anticipated ending fund balance, $442,290. That's about just under 20% fund balance. So I put a little blurb in there. We are on spend down plan for food service. That's why you're seeing the loss. That's where expected. And this is if we spent 100% of our funds. We know today that there are some things that we anticipate that are included in those expenditures that aren't going to happen. Timing with shipping, getting insulation for a big freezer project, it's just not going to happen. So that's about $75,000 that we're going to have to move over to next year. We just found out that it's more than likely not going to happen this year. So we have a calculation that we have to run in our maximum fund balance. If our final budget is 100% spent, is $625,075. So if we spent 100% of our funds, our ending fund balance would be in compliance with MDE. That's the goal. Whether or not we spend 100% of our expenses is the ongoing battle I see, that we continually look to stay on track. It's very difficult to get a lot of the equipment, so we keep working on it though. So whether or not we'll be able to hit that target remains unknown at this point, but we're doing our best. Okay, 2021 final student activity fund, final budget. Beginning fund balance was $299,135. Revenue, $98,484. Expenses, $397,619. So we'll end up with a surplus of $299,135. Ending fund balance, $0. I always show it this way. We would rather appropriate 100% of the expenses so we don't go over budget, but we always end up carrying over a fund balance and appropriating that to each club activity appropriately. Okay, we'll move on to 21-22.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Lost? Are you talking general fund? No, our expenditures are increasing 549,000, but our revenue was increasing 611,000. So those are just changes from revision 1 to the final revision. So our operating. Yep.
We're at a negative 548, we brought in how much more than was anticipated?
We have an operating surplus of $23,897 surplus. So we're anticipating that we're going to be adding to the fund balance because we started out at 5.274 million at the beginning, and we're anticipating ending at 5.297. So adding to the fund balance.
Why did we spend so much money on these categories? A lot of the children were at home during COVID. I know we gotta buy more supplies and stuff, or that's probably not an easy answer.
Well,
I know you explained it the best you can with your time that you had allowed.
I would say the increase in the revenue, there was a lot of grant money. So we take that out of the equation, then we look at the pandemic learning stipend. That was, quite a bit of it. So $378,000 of the $500,000 change.
I think one thing too that's not fully captured, and I've actually worked in several districts and I've never seen such an easy to understand rationale for how, because there's thousands of account numbers in here, so we're trying to boil it down. But what I would say is when we got, millions of dollars of these COVID funds and these ESSER funds, we're getting all of these federal grants. The expectation is that those dollars are being appropriated, right? So you can't take those dollars and then just put them into your fund equity, for example. So a lot of the things that you would see in expenditure changes are things that we otherwise wouldn't have spent had we not been required to appropriate those grant funds. But a lot of these things are, as she kind of went through purchase services, for example, we had to adjust for more SSP time because they were actually spending more time trying to coordinate with kids who are remote than they would if they were able to run a group right there. So we had to, give them training. There were multiple logistical things with that. And I think the thing to remember I think the core of your question, because a lot of kids weren't here, so where do we see the savings? Well, you see the savings in transportation. You don't have as much gas. But the fact of the matter is, we still ran 3 schools. We were probably the only school in Genesee County that fully did that, right? So whether you're bringing, 60% of your kids to school or 100% of your kids to school, you still got to run all your routes. And so you're not going to realize a 40% savings because 40% of the kids were remote. You're still educating those kids and you're still keeping your building open for the other 65%. So it's difficult to quantify in just a straight number and say, well, because some of these kids weren't here, we should see all those savings. There are areas where we did save, quite a few, in fact, and that's why we're carrying over a surplus. But right, you're spending most of those grant funds that were, like, for example, you had an additional $213,000 of Title I that we can't take that money and just put it into our fund balance. That has to be spent on very specific ways. And so your expenditures then are going to go up, as a result of that.
Okay. I know we continue to try to explain things more easily, and I don't know if explaining it this way versus the old way is any
I
more.
appreciate that you put, there was one thing from last year that I really appreciate, where you have the line item numbers, you put down like in parentheses what this is for. That way it prevents us from keep asking what that number is. And I do appreciate that. So
Good.
That's a good thing, that's all.
I try to listen when we are in our finance committees. What are you not getting so I can help explain it better? No, you don't. Yeah. Yep.
I'm glad that you put that in there.
Yep.
And I think it's good for the public because I look at the numbers and I'm like, okay, what's this budget line go to?
Yep.
Again, now that you have that in there, I think that helps it, but, people see 650 coming in and we only made, we put 27,000 in the bank, and I think that's a question that needed to be asked, and I think it's answered, so everybody understands it, at least to the public. Thank you.
Sure.
That always helps me.
Okay, so for 21-22, we're going to talk about current legislation, enrollment data, program and investment changes, staffing and benefits, and then we'll look at the budget detail. So the governor's update in late May announced significant investments in Michigan schools with multiple updates to initial budget proposals from the February 2021 initial communication. The governor appears to be setting the stage for equity in the foundation allowance and bringing the new state target foundation allowance of $8,692 per pupil for the 21-22 year. And so that's kind of the premise of our budget. And so I just wanted to state, though, if that's the target, but we're a little conservative and said, okay, we're not 100% sure really if that's going to happen. So we put the per pupil foundation allowance at $8,450 per pupil. Declining enrollment was also addressed by the governor, and the idea is to slow the impact of declining enrollment on district funding, which is a good thing. So at-risk changes are unknown, so our budget reflects 0 increase. The IDEA federal grant allocation, which is one of the larger federal grants that we have that funds special ed, the budget reflects a 0 increase. And since this was put together, I have found out what our initial allocation is, and it's not a huge increase, but it's not a decrease, so that's good news. But we're reflecting 0 in this budget. Title I, II, and IV, the initial allocations were lower than the 2021 final allocations, and so this budget reflects those decreases. ESSER II amount is reflected in the budget at 43.6% of the amount allocated to the district, which is the amount that was approved so far by the legislation.
Can I say one thing too, and this gets back to, Mr. Melky's question from earlier. We do our best on the initial budget to try and throw a dart at a dartboard. And so every year we're told, these are your allocations specifically for the grants. And inevitably, at least in recent history, just like you saw this additional $200,000 that came out of nowhere from the federal grants, they seem to, tell us a number that's lower than what it ends up being in the end. And that's a large reason why it's difficult to project from the beginning to the end, where those things will go, because it's really outside of our control. But they're telling us decreases now. Stay tuned. A year from now, you might be hearing that they increased it mid-year by a certain number. And so that's what makes it difficult, I think, for Chris, too, to project. But it's always better to project less on the initial budget and be happily surprised than the other way.
And we do, just from learning over the years, we do some planning to kind of soften the blow in case there is major increases so that we don't end up having to spend money on supplies and really put it into the salaries where the grants are intended to be spent. That's where MDE finds it's the most efficient. GISD likes it when we spend it on salary benefits, so we really focus on trying to do that. So just a sideline. Okay, enrollment data. So for 2021, the state came out with something called their super blend, and that was used for calculating the state aid membership, which is how they calculate how much money they're going to give us. So we had 75% of our funding was based on 1920, and 25% was based on 2021. So, but there was still a 90-10 blend within each of those years. But what this did was it softened the sudden decline that they anticipated districts were going to see due to COVID, which it did help us tremendously. So our state aid membership for 2021 was 3,596.84 pupils. For 21-22, the traditional blend is anticipated to be used to calculate the state aid membership. So that's going to be 90% of the fall 21 count and added to 10% of the spring 21 count. So we're anticipating that the 21-22 state aid membership blend will be 3,520.79 pupils. This will be a reduction of 76.05 FTEs. So when looking at the FTE decrease, though, we are budgeting for a slight increase in the 22A and 22B line items on the state aid funding, and this is due to showing an increase on the per pupil, so the 8450. That's approximately $123,000 increase. So if they weren't giving us more money, it would have been a much more significant blow to our budget. And then we are anticipating losing something called 11D funding of approximately $236,000 from 2021. The state made it abundantly clear this was one-time funding only, so it has been removed from our budget for next year. So the governor did recognize the declining enrollment issue, and it's anticipated there's going to be a formula to help the districts with that FTE reduction. So we calculated it at our FTE reduction times 70% times 8,275 per pupil. So we're anticipating $438,575 increase due to declining enrollment. Just an estimate, but just wanted to share that calculation with you. Program and investment changes. So we've kind of talked about it, but there's significant grant changes for 21-22. We have a lot of one-time funding that we're going to be removing from the previous year. Our CRF coronavirus relief funds, 1.269 million, they're gone. They aren't reoccurring. Gear funds, also $225,000, not decreasing. District COVID costs, $45,000. ESSER 1 formula, $28,000. ESSER equity, $48,000. But we will be adding new one-time funding for 21-22, and that's the ESSER 2 funds. So far, we have 43.6% approved by the legislature. Out of the $887,000 that's been allocated to us so far, we have $300,000 for summer school and $587,000 for the middle school HVAC equipment. And so far, that's been approved by MDE. So those grant funds are available once those expenditures start rolling in for summer school and the equipment. We had one-time expenditure adjustments from 2021 that had to be added back in or adjusted in the 21-22 budget. Custodial staffing, we had to add $145,000. We never had really a complete staff for custodians this year, so we were able to run on a reduced budget. So anticipating that we'll be fully staffed, we're going to be adding $145,000. We had a nice size rebate for electricity. We had to add back that to our budget, $200,000. Transportation supplies that we previously reduced, we're going to need to add back for fuel and parts, $107,000. Our transportation for the GISD for special ed, we reduced it previously. We need to add back $168,000. Maintenance contracted services, we did some emergency cleaning out of the general fund. We're going to decrease that for next year. We're going to reduce $128,000. If we have emergency cleaning needs next year, we're anticipating that it would be coming from the bond because it was due to bond-related projects. We had maintenance PPE supplies. We don't anticipate that we'll need $43,000 of those supplies this year. If we need to continue buying masks and gloves and things like that, there are other funds available in the maintenance department. Capital outlay for the truck and aerial lift and et cetera, we were able to reduce that $40,000 for 21-22. We had bus purchases and an air compressor for transportation. We were able to reduce capital outlay, $189,000. Those are not reoccurring expenses. And for the high school capital outlay for band equipment, the stage and chairs, we were able to reduce the capital outlay, $101,000. Technology supplies for those one-time big ticket items in 2021, we were able to remove for 21-22, that was $128,000. And then athletics capital outlay, reducing $30,000 for one-time expenses, hurdles, mats, and stuff like that. Okay, talk about our staffing and benefits. Salaries and benefits district-wide represent approximately 80% of our general fund budget, or $32,322,132. It's our largest component of our budget. Our teacher FTEs are coming in at this point at 193.8. We have one additional high school counselor. We've added an additional special ed teacher. We have an additional high school teacher. We have 3 additional elementary teachers. We have 2 new specials and 1 fifth grade position at Gaines. And then we've added a .13 to a special ed teaching position. The retirement rate increase is 0.56% increase from previous year, and that is effective on October 1st. Overall district cost is approximately $92,000 for that increase. PA 152 health insurance hard cap adjustments, they increased 3.3% effective January 2021. We have single, 2-person, and family rates that the district contributes for health insurance. We're budgeting for a 4% increase in all the other insurance line items like dental, vision, life insurance, and LTD. So overview, 21-22, our beginning fund balance is estimated at $5,297,931. Estimated revenue, $40,656,807. Estimated expenses, $40,642,412. Estimated operating surplus, $14,395. Ending fund balance anticipated at $5,312,326, or 13.07%. So slight increase. Here's the board resolution that will be presented for the board approval. Recaps the total revenue, total expenditures, and ending fund balance appropriated. Next slide. This is a nice graphic just to show where our fund equity has trended over the years. So we ended 1920 at $5,274,000, or 14.36%. And we're estimating 2021 fund balance is going to be at $5,297,931, or 12.87. And then we're estimating it to be stable, kind of flat, for 21-22 at $5,312,326, or 13.07%. Food service for 21-22. Our fund balance estimated beginning balance $442,290. Revenue $1,919,348. Total expenses $2,108,067. Looking at another operating loss of $188,719, leaving us a fund balance of $253,571. Still, very initial balance. We're not really sure where we're going to end up for our beginning balance, so I'm guessing this is going to definitely change. And then for 21-22, student activities, beginning fund balance, $300,000, revenue, $100,000, expenses, $400,000, and surplus, $0. So as I previously said, this is just initial. Lots of changes happen between now and this time next year when we have the final budget. So we just continue to work on and be flexible and responsive to the needs as they change. And so I don't know if anyone has any more questions. 21-22?
Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
Anyone? Go ahead, Brian.
Chris, this was simple and easy to walk through. I like how the format you have.
Okay, good.
It made it very easy for me anyway.
Good. Glad to hear that. Excellent. Okay.
But when you say we have a 12% surplus, and I know people say that's a lot, and that's a lot to do with union negotiations.
For food service, right?
No.
Oh.
I think for our general operating, I think you're estimating it, well,
13.
13.07 from 12.87. And people look at that, the public look at that, the teachers look at that, some board members look at that as, oh, that's a good fund balance. And it's much better than what it was prior to most of this board and, Ben being here. But people have to know, and I think it's good for people to understand that 12 to 13% of fund balance for a school district is about 4 to 6 weeks of operating. So maybe 8 weeks at the most. So if something happens, we have 6 weeks of operating budget to keep the school going. And I know my goal is, and I know everybody on this board member is to make it as large as we can, to have a little bit to fall back on in case we go through hard times again. And this board's much better at controlling the budget than what it was in 2011 and 10 and stuff. So a lot has to do with economic times. But I just want that to put out there to the public. Is that correct? 6 to 8 weeks of operating?
I mean, if we came to the point where the state
There's
wasn't,
no money coming in, correct?
we would probably slow non-payroll expenses. We would delay those payments and then look to have borrowing in place. I would have enough time to go out for borrowing, so that would be the emergency stop
So
loss.
borrowing becomes much more because then we don't have any money. The banks are going to look at us as a bad financial risk.
Yeah.
Like anything else with your credit report.
We were talking earlier that the state
So I'd like to
average,
keep it up high, so if we ever do have to borrow money, we can borrow at a lower interest rate. And the goal is here of all these board members, I think, is not to, I don't speak for them all, but I'm sure we all think the same at this point, that we don't want to borrow any money. But 12% sounds like a lot of money, but it's really only 4 to 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 7 weeks.
it's
of
about the
operating.
minimum, yeah. Interesting, I just found out the state average last year for fund balance was around 14%. So, we're not that far off.
Right.
I think
We're
schools,
doing much better than we
Yep.
did years ago. But yeah, I'd like to, thank you. I just want everybody to know that when we're talking, that I know it sounds like a lot of money, but when you say, hey, I got 10% of my checkbook, but if you lose your job,
Right.
that might only be for a month or two to operate your house, your car, and then all of a sudden you have nothing.
Yeah, we keep working on it. Yep.
Chris, thank you so much for your excellent work. Appreciate it very much.
I know you don't like coming at you.
Every June.
All right, moving forward, we have state guidance on the start of school beginning in fall 2021.
Thank you. I'm gonna do my best. I know that this screen resolution is a little wonky. Yep. All right. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I am going to send this link to you, and you can, it's a public link, so it's readily available to anyone that would be interested. But the Student Recovery Advisory Council, which is a council that was put together by the governor and several members of the education community as well as the legislature, they've put this plan together, which is very robust. So this came out in May, and essentially, you know, we've talked quite a bit about the fact that this past year had so many challenges. What are we going to do to close those gaps, right? There are gaps in social emotional learning, there are gaps in academic learning, and those things are, you know, very, very important to try and tackle and attack. And so, you know, without reading every single thing here, I just wanted to bring this to your attention, and then if you had questions, this right here is about a comprehensive student recovery plan. So how do we build, what are some guiding principles around wellness? What are some guiding principles around academic acceleration and how we would close some of those achievement gaps? The document is extensive, but it's pretty well done. I want to bring this to your attention and kind of let you know that there's some guidance that we're using. Certainly our teams are going to be looking at this as we think about, you know, kicking off the fall on a very, at a very high level. One thing that I will kind of say, and I think I haven't gotten direction otherwise from this board, but we are operating under the premise of coming back in the fall to normal school. So the mask mandate was lifted just this past week. We're seeing that in summer school, we certainly aren't preventing anyone from wearing masks, but you know, those are optional. We're seeing staff members at a high rate have been vaccinated. We're seeing, you know, the numbers that are quite tepid at this point. So as we look at planning for the fall and we ask our families and we've surveyed our families, what modality do you want? Almost unanimously, our parents are telling us they want to come back to school, to normal school. And so that's what we're planning for. So when you look at this document, I don't want you to think that our vision or our planning is around, you know, doing something different than that. We are planning for a full-scale back to school, and we're very excited about that. And we're excited for a lot of the things that I think didn't happen this year, and they might seem small, but something as simple as having parent volunteers back in the buildings. You know, this year we noticed, and some of our principals even commented of how it was hard not to have some of our parents, you know, in the buildings and volunteering and doing those things. We want to see those things come back. We want to invite our, you know, our elementary readers back into the buildings. We're excited about those pieces. And so we are planning, and our teams are planning for a full-fledged back to normal in the fall. And there are some things that will stay. We're still going to be doing a lot of our sanitation and cleaning procedures. We're going to have a lot of those things. But, you know, students eating in the lunchrooms again versus eating in classrooms. Just a lot of things that we're kind of planning for. So I wanted to just put the fact out there that there is kind of a blueprint that the state is using, and we're using it as a resource. It's not a like an absolute or a game plan. It's just a resource. We are using that, but our team is planning for a full-fledged return to the fall. So, if there's any change in that, I would need to know, but that's the conversation that we've had to this point, and that's kind of how I'm moving forward. So I just wanted to kind of bring you up to date that planning is going very well, and staffing has gone well. We're excited about getting our kids back in the buildings at a pretty high rate.
Any questions for Ben? No? Thanks for sharing that, Ben.
Yes. I mean, certainly we would want to ensure that anyone that wanted to wear a mask could wear one, but it was not going to be a requirement. Yep.
Ben, just a quick question. Logistically, because we've been following the roadmap that we've had in place and we've voted on those amendments each month, will we need to present one for like August for back to school, or what are those logistics?
So in August, I will be presenting the board with kind of here's an update on our kickoff, right? So here's what we're going to be kicking off with. But one of the things that I won't fully know yet is that we have no current requirement to continue, say, the annual extended continuity of learning plan and those types of things. There is some talk that some legislators want to keep that in there. To me, it's not really that big of a deal if they do. I think it's just another opportunity to talk about it at a board meeting, which is great. But certainly we will be presenting in August before school starts, again, and then making sure that you guys have time, throughout the summer to weigh in. If you have, a change of course that you're seeing, then you can kind of let us know and we can adjust the course. Yeah.
Mike?
Thank you. You're going to have to sit down here. I need 7 people to turn this down. Okay, thank you. But that's a good comment that Alicia had. And I know we have our virtual learning center, but are we going to offer any online? I mean, are we going to do that? There was going to probably be a small percentage of people that don't want to send their kids back that's absolutely 100% safe. So we are going to do that in our continuity once the state gives us their guidelines and we can modify it slightly.
Yeah. So for example, just like this year, if we felt like there was a reason that we needed to, go remote for whatever reason, we would have, if it was an emergency, I would make the decision, but then at the next board meeting, you guys would actually make the call on whether you'd want to do that. One of the things that I think is different for this next year as it relates to, going remote and things like that, we are moving our staff into a pretty robust learning management system. And what that is it's the online version. So most colleges and universities now, if you take a college class, you're taking it on you're taking some form of an online version of that class, right? Our staff is going to be prepared so that we really hope it doesn't happen, but in the event that we were to be put out again for whatever reason, we're not going to be caught in a similar situation where it's like we don't know what to do. Are we making copies and packets and trying to be kind of fumbling around? I think we did phenomenally as a district. I think our staff did amazing things, but now that we know, right, that could happen, and that becomes more reality, we're going to be more prepared in the future. So we've got some of those plans in place. But to your specific point about online, we have a couple different options. So we are working with the ISD right now, and most of the districts in the county are not seeing a very large number of families that want online learning. So it's not possible. Let's just say Swartz Creek has 5 students that are in 3rd grade who want online. Well, we can't run a teacher teaching 5 students, right? That doesn't financially or any way work out, right? So if we're going to service those children, we're working with the ISD so that there's a possibility that maybe one of our teachers, or maybe it's a teacher from Davison, right, is going to be teaching, and we can put our 5 3rd graders in with 2 3rd graders from Carmen and 2 3rd graders from Grand Blanc, and it'll be kind of a county-wide option.
That's great.
So,
I think that's a great idea as long as the kids have something, but that's great if GISD would do it. I know we can't afford it.
No. So we're working on that with them through a partnership. And then, of course, our virtual learning center, which grew this year, that program is off and running and doing well. So the virtual learning center is really going to target the 6 through 12 students more than the K through 5. And so I think it's going to be a little bit more challenging to try and find those elementary parents that want that online option. And we have made some adjustments as well, because for an elementary student to be successful and online, they have to have parental support at home. And if they don't, it just doesn't work. And so it's, we've kind of moved in that direction. I think parents have seen that too. So we have very few that are even requesting that at this point.
That's good. But this is, I don't want to, this might be sour grapes. Good reason to keep open Gaines for a little while.
Yeah.
Because we could put kids there if they wanted a smaller school. I mean, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, if there was 20 kids, but you don't think there's going to be that many, 5 or 10 maybe at the most.
Well, it's going to depend. I mean, I think the numbers are.
Are we getting any
they're low.
feedback from our K through 5? Is it?
Oh, yeah, it's extremely low.
Okay.
I mean, you might have 1 in first grade, 2.
Oh, so
in second.
it's very low then. Okay.
Yeah.
That answered my question. Thank you, Ben.
Yep.
Okay. All right, moving on. We have a board member vacancy. And I think Mr. Meinke has the letter that we received from Mike Ahern resigning from the board effective yesterday. And we are very sad to see Mike go. But we are required as a board within the next 30 days to fill that vacancy, or we risk having the Genesee Intermediate School District do it for us. So we take that very seriously, and tonight we're going to start that process. So I'm going to let Ben talk a little bit about the process that we're required to follow and what that would mean to any community members that are interested in applying.
Thank you. So I do have the resignation letter there from Mr. Ahern. I do know that he is going to be missed tremendously, not just by me personally, and I know by many of you, and I hope that we'll have an opportunity to celebrate him, more formally. One thing that I would like to talk through is how this actually gets done and how we would go about this process. It's timely with our new policies that were approved about a month ago. We have an actual process for appointing a new board member to a vacancy. And so that policy is 2404. And as Mrs. Germain said, we have 30 days to appoint a new person, a new trustee, or the ISD will fill the vacancy for us. And that's something I've talked with them. We don't want that to happen, certainly, and they don't want that to happen either. They've not had to do that anywhere. They came close with one district, but they haven't had to do that yet. So the main reason that would become an issue would be if there was a lack of interest. I don't believe that that's going to be the case here in Creek. We have a very vibrant and active parent community. I think that there will be interest in the position. And so I'll talk a little bit through how this goes. So first of all, my role is simply to facilitate. I'm not going to weigh in. I'm not going to make any suggestions. I'm not going to I don't have a vote either. So, but I will try to help answer your questions and guide you through the process. So first and foremost, we have 30 days, which puts us really at July 22nd. So typically when this is done, the last time we had to do this was actually 4 years ago or 3 years ago when we had Jessica's position. And we need to solicit the community for people who have an interest in applying for the position, for the vacancy. There's a posting that will go out. We'll push the posting out in the Flint Journal and the Swartz Creek View. We'll push the position out on our website. It will be posted there, and then we will have to put a posting deadline. And probably what I would recommend is July 14th, which would be a week before the next board meeting. That would give people plenty of time to get their information in. At that time, my recommendation is to follow a process that we have outlined in the past and has worked very well for the district. We would, at the July 21st board meeting, we would allocate the time for the board to formally interview and ask questions of candidates in a public open meeting public meeting session. At that time, you would interview the candidates. You might have 6 candidates, you might have 2 candidates, you might have 1 candidate, but you would interview the candidates for the board, and then the board would go through a recommending process. And I can get into the details of that later, but essentially each board member would select a first and second choice candidate. That has to be publicly recorded. And then I would work to try and help you get to consensus, and you will have, be able to appoint this new board member. The term of this new board member will be, Mr. Ahern's seat is scheduled to end formally in 2024. So this particular vacancy is a little bit unique because what's going to happen is you would actually, as a board, appoint a member, a trustee, who would stay until the next board election, which is actually November of 2022. So this person that you appoint would be on the board as a trustee through the next board election, which is 2022. At that time, there would be a board position that would be a partial term. It would be a 2-year term that would go until the end of Mr. Ahern's term, which is the end of 2024. And then that seat would be up for election for its normal rotation for a full 4-year term at that time. So you're appointing essentially somebody until the next general board election, which is November of 22, in which case that seat would be posted and people would have to file like normal for a partial 2-year term. And they would declare whether or not they were, applying at that time to run for a 4-year term or for the partial 2-year term. And then at the conclusion of that 2-year term, that would take you to the 2024, which is the end of Mr. Ahern's tenure in his elected seat. And then that seat would be back on rotation as a full 4-year term. So that's a little bit about the process, and I want to give you an opportunity to discuss that, talk about it, ask questions, and then our plan would be to get that posted as soon as possible this week so that we can get any interested community member to start to apply. Obviously, in order to qualify to be a board member, you do have to be a resident within the school district boundaries. And so we hope that we'll get a good amount of turnout and a good group of people that would be interested in serving in that capacity.
And 18 years or older.
18 years or older, yes.
Carrie, is that for Jack's benefit?
No, that is
Madam
part of the requirement.
Yes, okay. Yeah, can I say some things? For sure. Yeah. I hate to see Mike leave, number one. He brings a lot of knowledge, and, we've in the finance committee all the time with Miss Chris and always fighting about money or talking about money. But I know that we have to have that special election. Is there a way that you can have this special election sooner? If all the districts are doing it, because you can pay for that, I think. Not that I want to spend money, or is that what MCL says specifics? I did do a little research on it. I think you can have an election sooner, maybe. Or are we just going to decide to do that?
Well, so in talking with our attorney and then also talking with the county clerk's office, because the unique thing about this one is that it's not, halfway through the term, and so it's a little bit of a longer one.
Yeah, normally anything under 2 years, you have to have an election. It's usually the first available election. After 2 years, you can appoint somebody for the remaining of the office.
Yeah, so our school board elections are in the even years. So the next election, and you also have to factor in filing deadlines and all of those things. And so we're beyond the filing deadlines, even if somebody were to try and run an election for this November. And so.
Actually, we're not. Usually it's on July 21st for school boards, I think. So we'd make it, but regardless, it's an odd year.
Yeah, so it would be an odd year. So the next school board election comes, and so their guidance to us is we need to appoint and we need to let them know who the appointee is, and that person would have to run if they wanted to stay. Yep, for that seat.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, sorry.
I add some more, but go ahead, Jack.
Okay, I just also want to take the time to appreciate Mike for being on the board for as many years as he has been. Bringing his experience to the board has been a big help for me personally. He's been a great guy and a great friend, and I'm sad to see him go, but I hope all is well with him, and just absolutely sending thank you to him.
Thank you, Jack. All right, so I think one question that might come up from the community is, does the individual who is appointed have to run for that 2-year partial term? And I don't think that's clearly stated anywhere.
They do not have to run for that 2-year term. So if they were appointed and they chose, after getting into it, that they hated it, they would not have to continue doing that. But if they wanted to continue, they would have to run for that.
Okay.
Why do all these options come up after certain elections? Just
My only concern is that if the board we're going to appoint somebody, we don't want GSA to do it. Right? We want to have control of our own, who works with us, I would think. And as a fair representation to the public, and we don't usually have a big turnout at the board meetings. It's not like there's one guy or one lady there that's like, I want, because that would be somebody you could pick. And then if you pick somebody that ran from last year's term, sometimes you give them a unfair advantage. My only concern is, and I've held several public offices, is that if we do appoint someone, that we appoint somebody that's more of a caretaker and doesn't want to run, because then it gives them gives him or her an unfair advantage. It gives them an unfair advantage because they've already been here 2 years and they run against somebody else in the public. So that's just something I'm thinking off the top of my head. I would like to, if we can get the names out soon and get them back to us, is that we get somebody that's more of a caretaker and somebody's like, hey, I know the system, maybe a former board member, and let them sit in the position, because we're talking 14 months basically once the dust settles, and then let everybody run as a clean slate. But yeah, I don't know if we can find anybody to do that. I don't know if that's even feasible.
So I would leave it up to the community to determine their interest. We know there are likely individuals out there who would like to sit in this position, and we would welcome any and all folks. I think it's important to note that it's helpful for us to have some kind of idea of who that person is. If you have a cover letter, a resume, it's really helpful in our review, because we're only going to have that week to look at the applicants prior to our meeting where we are interviewing folks. And this is a decision we do take very seriously. This is a seat that needs to be filled, and so we're going to be looking for the best candidate. And in my opinion, only regardless of the election next year. We have to look at the next year and a half and make sure we have the best candidate sitting here in this seat. So
Yeah,
I agree. I think Mike was amazing in his organization, his professionalism, his integrity. So I'm going to miss all that. I've known Mike 30 years. But I'm also, I want the best. Whoever we appoint, I want them to be the best at what we're doing here. The best for the school, the kids, the board, to work with us, work with all of us as a unit. What, as far as the posting, what are we going to ask the public when we ask the posting? What are they going to ask? We're going to want a paragraph, a resume? Or
There's a few items that they'll be asked for: cover letter. There's kind of a statement of purpose, or why do you want to serve on the board? Kind of a question, and it's going to be almost like a position vacancy type posting, and we're going to get it out there in print media as well as digital media, and hope that we get a good response. People will probably start turning things in within the next week, but we would want to put a deadline out there around July 14th so that we could make sure there's at least a week of time for you to be able to review any of those documents that they send in.
And then, of course, we've got the interview process.
And then you have the interview.
When was our next meeting again?
Well, we're going to have our next meeting on the 21st.
So that gives us enough time. I don't want to get flooded with 400 applicants and then we don't have time to do it.
That would be a fantastic problem to have. I don't foresee it.
This might be a long board meeting on the 21st.
Yes, so it is possible.
Yeah, so I mean, we got to do some screening, because if we got to read everybody's resume, and maybe Alicia's right, maybe we only have 2 or 3 people, or maybe we'll get some former board members that would want to be, that are interested to step in, or who's ever the best qualified, as Brian and Carrie said, but.
This isn't anything new, Chuck. I mean,
Yeah.
this district has gone through this basically the last 2 to 3 election cycles. So the process, the forms, the requirements, all of that's pretty standard.
If you would like, I just can add to your point, if you would like us to, we can make that, the deadline a little bit sooner. We want to balance giving everybody enough time to get their materials in, but we could make it sooner if you wanted more time to review things. So that, you guys can direct that however you want.
When we vote on it, we give the 2 names. What happens if we have ties with 6 board members? Is there a
gets
stipulation in the
revoted.
MCL for that? Because I've read part of it, but I don't remember hearing that part of it.
Yeah, the MCL does not address the specific process. So we've had a process in the past that we've used at least a couple times since I've been here, which does tend to work, in terms of being able to merit out, there's a certain number of points given to a first place, certain number of points given to a second place. And then, we'll make sure that stuff is very clearly identified when we have that meeting, so that I'll go over all of that before we actually get into the meeting at all. But it's a pretty standard procedure, but yes, if you get to a point where you're kind of gridlocked, there may need to be some further deliberation, because there's only one vacancy.
Okay.
One of the most important components that is, Chuck, as you're well aware, we have to do it publicly. So everybody has to state who their candidate is, and doesn't have to tell me why, but then we'll rank order, as Ben mentioned.
Okay.
I have one more question.
Sure, go ahead.
We're going to have to appoint a new trustee, right? Or does the new person take over as trustee? You mean treasurer? Treasurer, yes, my apologies. I meant treasurer. So we're going to have to appoint a new treasurer?
Yes, so what will happen is, as probably in the same night, you're going to have somewhat of a mini organizational meeting, which would mean that as you look at your officers, right, so you have a position vacant for treasurer, so that would mean, are there any current trustees that would be interested in, being the treasurer? Are there, and if there is a trustee that's interested in being a treasurer, is that person holding a current role? And then, is there anyone interested in doing that? That's going to be more of a deliberation at the table for you.
Okay. All right.
So Ben, I would just ask, do we need to do it that night? Or can we wait until August to do that?
There's 2 answers I'm going to give you. So functionally, you absolutely could wait until August. There are a couple things just in terms of the district operation that the treasurer does. The treasurer is pretty involved. The treasurer spends a lot of time going over our check registers. The treasurer spends a lot of time talking with, auditors about our financial statements. And so we would want to not wait so long that we were missing, somebody for those pieces.
Okay.
What are we going to do in the meantime? Who's going to do that to meet with Chris and all that?
Well, currently you and Jessica serve on the finance committee, so I would hope that maybe you 2 would be able to, at least for this next month at the finance committee, have an opportunity to,
You look real excited.
No, I'm already there, and I'm involved in it anyways every month.
Right.
Chris, that's what I'm wondering, who's going to give the reports, and, because Mike did a good job on the
He
reports.
did, yeah. So we may just have to do a team
We'll figure it out.
approach for this next one, and then.
On our subcommittees, though, aren't we supposed to have 3 members there, or is it 2 minimum? I think it was.
You don't have to. There's nothing there's no requirement of that, but, we've typically had 2 to 3 in every company.
My experience in the last 2 years here, we've always had at least 2, sometimes 4.
Sure.
Because anybody can sit in on it, but, okay.
Sure.
Ben, to revisit your question whether we needed to move up the deadline date,
Sure.
I'll just voice my personal opinion. I think for the public's sake, with it coming up on a holiday week, I personally think a week's time for me to review is plenty. And I think that gives the public some time. One, we need to be able to get the word out, and then individuals need to get themselves prepared. I think the 14th is appropriate.
So I'm going to bring up the topic that we've talked about before, and this is not public comment, but in my experience with appointing board members, we're going to have to have some consensus of the limit of time that we give people to present or to respond to our questions, so that it's fair across the board. So I would say 5 minutes for people to have a conversation with us, and then we could ask questions, but not to exceed that. I don't know how others
Is that
feel.
5 minutes total, Carrie, that they talk, and then we ask each, can we like be limited to one question apiece or something, or, because there could be a 5-minute conversation engaged if I ask a certain person a question, or is that the way we're gonna do it? Is that what you're saying?
That's a very good question, and we could
Okay.
have a list of questions that each of us ask.
Okay,
But I'm saying the person who's presenting to us, to be fair, we
Right.
should limit the time that they're given, and then they can prioritize what they share with us.
I can say from my experience, I was provided 3 provisional questions ahead of time, scripted, so that you can present an introduction of yourself, 3 scripted questions, so it's equal across the board. And then there were specific questions, but I think also from a logistics perspective, and just to be fair, as Carrie mentioned, we should have additional questions that we want to ask. Anybody that we ask a question, it needs to be asked to everybody that's applying.
what's that, Alicia, everybody gets the same questions, is that what you, yeah.
Correct.
I agree, I don't think anybody should get a surprise.
Correct.
Any one individual should be surprised with a gotcha question, it should be all the same.
Well, I mean, you can come up with a question even that day, but if you ask that question to one candidate, they all have to have an equal opportunity to.
Did you
reply
go
to
through the
those.
process last time, when there was a last appointment?
It was 2 appointments previous.
Oh,
It was,
okay.
it was previous to my actual seat that I applied for an open vacancy prior to running. Yes. It didn't work out so well, but
Here now.
the public chose differently than the board did, but.
May I share part of what my experience was? And
I
there
forgot
are 2
you were
things that I'd like to say, because I'm really glad I wasn't somebody who was just holding a seat for an election. I came, and I don't mean that, and I know you didn't mean it in any kind of offensive way, and it was already said, the best, well, most, hopefully,
Yes.
not most qualified, because I think the other candidates, when I walked in, could have all done a very good job, and I'm thankful that I was appointed. But what the process was, is I had to submit a letter of interest along with a resume, and I think I did in 3 references. That was the first step. Once that was received, then I want to say it was like 3 days before, but I chose at the very last minute. I had been praying about it and decided to submit. I got 3 questions back, and they asked for me to submit those answers in writing prior to the board meeting, so the board could already review what the answer was.
That's good.
And then and there were, I believe, 6 candidates, and we each were allowed 10 minutes to answer those same 3 questions. So if we wanted, we could just read right off it, we could give a completely different answer, whatever. And then most of those answers probably took 5 to 7 minutes, maybe in those last few minutes. That's when then if the board had other questions, you could actually have a little bit of interaction. I think 5 minutes might not be quite long enough, but 10 minutes definitely was for each of us.
And yeah, you speak from experience, Jessica. And my position I was thinking that we were only going to have a short-term 5 months, so a caretaker position. That's what I meant by that. And once he talked about the even years, that makes more sense to me. But I've always felt that, giving somebody an appointment, and not that whether they earned it or not, and then the election's, 5 months down the road, and although it may not say incumbent in there, it says incumbent, it gives them, maybe it's, I don't know what the other people think, but I think sometimes it's unfair if somebody else is running for that position. And that's just my personal opinion, if it's a short term. And we're talking more now from what we're talking 2022, November. So that's quite a ways, but I guess we'll have to make a really good decision.
17 months.
15, 16, by the time they get appointed, 15 months, 16 months. So, Yes. Okay,
So,
great.
so I'm hearing, thank you, Jessica, and thanks for reminding me of the 10 minutes. So if everybody's okay, we would allow 10 minutes for people to answer our questions, and then if they have excess time, maybe give us some additional information.
I'm good with it.
We have, if we want 3 questions, I would take suggestions on how we should create those questions.
Probably still have mine, Carrie.
If,
I have mine, and I thought they were great questions.
Yeah,
okay,
me too.
so why don't you submit those to Ben, and he can share them with us? And if we have any other suggestions, we can add to that, but that's a great place to start. So I just want to reiterate to the community, please, if you're considering running for the board, or this is a great opportunity to see if this is something that you would like to be part of, please consider applying for the position. And it will be due to the board office by July 14th.
Yep, and our goal will be to post it no later than Monday. So if you, I'll get those questions to you, and then hopefully you can think about them if there's anything else you'd like me to ask. And then we want to get this posted by Monday so that there's a full 2 weeks for people to apply. And they will direct those to Sue at Sue's office, and she'll be the collector of every application, and then we'll.
Can you make sure that it's clear that they do need to be at the board meeting to present themselves? On the
Yes.
21st?
What's the deadline again? You guys are going to go all the way to the 14th for them to submit applications?
And at that point, they'll get those questions to submit to us in writing. And I know it doesn't seem like a lot of time, Chuck, but when I was appointed to the board, I literally had 2 days to write my letter, do my application, answer the questions, and submit them to the board. It was a different era.
No, I think you did great for 2 days, but I think we're giving them 3 weeks, which I thought was a long time. I thought if we gave them 2 weeks to sign up a deadline, and then.
Well, you also have the holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that way we can kind of sort through who has misdemeanors or felony complaints that we don't want on the board, or some, you know what I mean? I don't know, you know?
Yeah.
But that's fine.
You guys decide if you want me to move it to a different date, I will.
Today's the
Otherwise,
23rd, that's 21 days.
But it's posting
we'll
Monday?
post it on Monday.
Yes, okay. So yeah, subtract 3, you're right, we're good.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Just a quick thought. We did this time and time again in the past. There's minutes on it. If anybody wants to review the minutes from the past, we can get a lot of information, because the last couple of times that I remember going through this process, it worked really good. Really good. So if anybody want to review those minutes, they're there.
You've been here the longest, Brian, so
Yeah.
I'm sure that's good advice.
When they invented paper.
They didn't have computers, he had pencils.
Papyrus and stylus.
We
had
had
an
computers back
eraser.
then, Jessica. We had computers. It was digital.
All right. Any other questions from our board?
Not on that, yeah.
We look forward to the interest from the community. So thank you. And again, thanks to Mr. Ahern for his years of service, and I will miss him. He's been a great counsel and a great board member.
I'll add one comment, Carrie, and I think I will speak for everybody, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think all of us are also very open to explaining our role, our level of involvement, commitment. If there are questions that the community has about what this position entails, all of our emails are available on our website. Please reach out to any of us, and I think we would all welcome that. We want somebody who's going to be dedicated and involved and informed.
All right. Thank you very much.
And I did find my questions, by the way.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on, we have several board action items, beginning with the approval of the 2020-2021 Swartz Creek Community Schools budget. I would entertain a motion for approval. Was that Jack?
Yep.
And Jessica? All right, any comments or questions? Be it resolved that the Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education approves the 2020-2021 Swartz Creek Community Schools budget as presented. Sue, could you do roll call, please?
Brian Sapanic,
Yes.
Chuck Melkey,
Yes.
Carrie Germain,
Yes.
Jack Sayer,
Yes.
Jessica LeNave,
Yes.
Alicia Gardner.
Yes.
Six yes.
All right, motion passes. Moving on to the approval of our 2021-2022 Swartz Creek Community Schools budget. I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Support.
Brian and Jessica, any comments or questions? Be it resolved that the Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education approves the 2021-2022 Swartz Creek Community Schools budget as presented. Sue, roll call, please.
Alicia Gardner,
Yes.
Jessica LaNave,
Yes.
Jack Sayer,
Yes.
Carrie Germain,
Yes.
Chuck Melkey. Yes. Brian Sapanic.
Yes.
6 yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. And I guess you have money to work with this year, Chris. And thanks again for all of your work. All right, finally, we have approval of the SCEA employment before us.
Very excited about this tonight and had an opportunity to interview a phenomenal candidate for us and for our kids. And so I'm going to ask Mr. Heatherton to introduce our next teaching candidate.
Thank you very much. We have Luke Moore with us here today, and a little bit about Luke. Luke is a Michigan State graduate. We're not going to hold that against him. He did his student teaching here in Swartz Creek. We were very excited. He, as Ben said, is a phenomenal candidate. His knowledge of student learning and pedagogy is bar none, especially for a teacher coming right out of college. He has a thorough knowledge of what's happening in the classroom, and then did a lot of long-term subbing for us and spent the year, the rest of the year in Creek with us. So we're pretty excited for his chance to work with us. Looks like he'll be at Deke in the special ed department. His bachelor's is a elementary and a special education bachelor's, and so we're hiring him for a special education position at Deke Elementary, and he's been working great with the teachers and the students and the parents, and we're just pretty excited. I don't know if he has anything to add to that, but I do present to you for your opportunity to discuss and approve the hire of Luke Moore for special education at Deke.
Luke, I know maybe you want to tell the board a little bit about when you're getting married, because that's coming up pretty quick here.
Actually, it already did.
Okay, so you're back from your honeymoon now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got married on the last day of school.
Step up.
Yeah, go ahead. Come up and.
I thought you were one of the students. I honestly thought he was a high school student that we're going to do something with. I didn't.
Yeah, it was a super crazy week, the week that I went through all the process with the interviews. I was offered a job on Wednesday, got an apartment on Thursday, and then got married on Friday. So it was just a huge week.
How old are you?
I am 24.
Okay. I'm just asking, he's a nice young
The kids
kid.
ask all the time.
Yeah. He looks like he's in high school. That's why I'm asking.
Younger than me?
Yeah, he does. I thought he was your buddy.
So yeah, I mean, like Rod said, I did half of my student teaching here at Swartz Creek. I was a premier sub then for the rest of the school year. I just really loved all the experiences I had here at Swartz Creek, and I'm really thankful that I had the opportunity to interview with you guys, that you offered me a job, and I'm really excited to work here at the district.
Outstanding. Well, we're very happy that you're here, but you're not done yet. Any other questions for Luke before we move forward?
Are you staying local, Luke? Are you staying local?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Was most all of your student teaching at Deke School?
Actually, no, I was at Cyring.
Oh.
So with Michigan State, for the special ed internship, you do half of it in special education and half of it in general education. And so for my special ed placement, I was at Atherton, and then my general ed placement was actually here in Swartz Creek.
At Cyring?
Yeah, at Cyring.
The question, the second page is recommendation. Who authored this? There's no name on it, this recommendation.
That would be Mr. Bouchon.
Okay. Well, it's a good recommendation, whoever it was, if it was Derek.
All right, well, with that, I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Brian?
Support.
Is that Chuck?
Yes.
All right, be it resolved, any comments or questions first? Be it resolved that the Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education approves SCEA employment of Luke Moore, SCCS Special Education Teacher, as presented. Let's do roll call, Sue.
Jack Sayer,
Yes.
Brian Sapanik,
Yes.
Jessica LaNave,
Yes.
Chuck Melkey,
Yes.
Alicia Gardner,
Yes.
Carrie Germain.
Yes,
6 yes.
motion passes. Welcome, Luke.
Thank you. Show me your driver's license. You look so young.
Congratulations and welcome.
He's older than Jack, though. Welcome aboard. I'm sure your wife is happier for you.
He's just easy.
Congratulations.
Congrats on getting married as well.
All right, next we have public comment opportunity. If you'd like to address the board, please stand, state your name, and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, please.
Okay, my name is Karen Hinspeter. I have a grandson that I have guardianship of who attends Gaines Elementary, and I also have another granddaughter that attends Gaines Elementary. I have two concerns, and I'll state them both, and then I'll let you address them. One is, and this is from another parent that couldn't attend tonight, that has a concern that she called administration about doing school choice to Gaines. She called this week, and she was told that we are no longer accepting inter-school choice in the district. So her concern is if we're trying to increase those numbers at Gaines, why are parents being told they can't come to Gaines now?
May I?
Children went to Gaines, and when they moved the lines last year, then she was moved to Morris, but she did school choice last year and drove her kids or took them to a bus stop or something so they could go to Gaines. So she thought she had to call again and do it again. Well, so she was told no, that she couldn't do it, so then she contacted the principal, and I think everything's straightened out for her, but the concern is if other parents call, and they're being told no, that they can't choose Gaines as a school, how are we gonna build that enrollment? My second concern is the date on when we're gonna make this decision of what we're gonna do with Gaines, because I feel like this has been an ongoing problem, and I feel like now we're waiting till now to discuss this. And as a parent of having a child in that school, I don't want to wait till the week before to know what my child's doing. I think this needs to be a priority and taken care of now. I don't want to leave the district. We're very involved in the district, but I need answers. I don't want to wait till a week before school to know where they're going. That's what I have to say.
Thank you,
Could I
Karen.
actually do the address here? So I believe the first problem with the school choice, I believe was a miscommunication because we always accept school choice to Gaines specifically. In the district, for the other elementary schools we don't, but for Gaines specifically, we do. So that was likely a miscommunication, and I believe Ben sorted that out, I believe, if I'm hearing this correctly.
Yep, that I appreciate the question, and I know Jack had reached out and had been contacted as well, and that was a miscommunication, and it is accurate that we're not accepting inter-district choice at elementary level for the other 4 elementaries. We've never not allowed somebody to go to Gaines, so we corrected it and called the person within the same day, and it was resolved. So, we hope that anybody else that would question or want to go out, and we're going to do a survey, would certainly feel comfortable doing that, and we would make sure they could do that.
As for your second concern on when we will make a decision, I was going to bring this up later, but might as well address it now. I think you're absolutely correct. This should be a priority to us because we are responsible to the community. My personal thoughts is that we should have a decision on what we are doing by, at the very latest, the August 25th meeting. I think that is the latest that we should do, being that the school year starts on the 30th, the next week. I think maybe even before that, we should have it done. But absolutely, I think we should even make maybe a resolution for this, that we will have this figured out by August 25th. If any other board members have any thoughts on that.
Echo your sentiment, Jack, and I even think it should be sooner. Because I don't think anybody should have to go to August 25th and decide whether or not they're going to go to games or not. So it should be July 25th. That's something, and I know it's going to be tough for you to do, Ben. You're overwhelmed with everything, but it's not fair to the parents there. I've lived in Swartz Creek for 43 years. All my boys went here. I've lived on Miller Road. I'd be hot if they told me on August 25th, oh, Cyrene isn't going to be open, and that's where my boys went. I'd blow a gasket. And people are saying, well, you blow a gasket anyway. So, well, that may be true. But the problem is that it's not fair to the public out there. We should, and I was going to wait to my comments on this, keep it shorter, and just, I think we need to address it soon and let the people know what's going to happen with it, and we have our 5 options. We may have to have a special meeting, and I know nobody wants to do that in the summertime. We all have busy schedules, but I'm willing to do it because that's why we got elected, and we need to take care of this problem. We owe it to the public, and I echo this thing, but I think it should be sooner.
So Ben, I'm going to let you weigh in for a minute, and I think we have to do our due diligence. I know you have plans for another meeting. You have the ability to do surveys, but I'm going to let you speak to that.
Yeah, I think certainly we could, I think, I wouldn't think anyone would disagree with both the sentiment of the comment or any, what I'm hearing. We can do this at whatever point. And I think when you say a decision, the decision might be that we're not going to make a decision on it. Right? I mean, the decision might be that we're going to wait to do nothing. We're not going to do anything with it. One of the things that I've heard is they would like to know that there's a commitment to, one way or another. Either we're going to move in a direction or we're going to keep it the way it is and we're not going to talk about it. We're going to be okay with it, for X amount of years. So whatever that looks like, I think that's something you'll have to deliberate, and I do think you need a special meeting, and I think we just have to accommodate schedules, and we'd see about that last week in July, first week in August, and try and find a date that we could put on the calendar. And if that works, then even at the July 19th meeting when I'm out there, I can let them know, this was when the board would deliberate about it and make a decision. Or not make a decision.
Madam President, is it possible on these types of issues, and I know it's going to be a board decision, but I'm willing to do it, to sit on, if you want to appoint a subcommittee for 2 or 3 of us to help Ben or do something so we can get it rolling, where some of the recommendations like we do for the building and treasurer and other finance and academic, I don't even know if that's feasible or not, if that would cause us more work to have a small subcommittee in the next few weeks, because I'm willing to sit in on it with my fellow board members to come up with ideas, you know what I mean? Whether we leave it alone or we come up with something. Thank you.
All right. Wait, can I actually say a few more things? I got a couple more. I think certainly we need to have maybe a special meeting put in there somewhere, being that between now and the last meeting in August, we have just the July meeting, and then we have a meeting on the 11th of August, and then the 25th. I think certainly we could add a special meeting to that specifically for a discussion about this. And I think I still would like to maybe get more board members' thoughts than just Chuck's. I think we should, at the very latest, have this done by the end of August, if not before that. I'd like to hear where the rest of the board is at on that, if possible.
I would like to see a decision made early August. So we have at least.
So like by the 11th?
Or before.
Mm-hmm. My turn?
Or no decision.
I completely agree with, is it Karen? I apologize. Okay. Yes, I do think we have an obligation if we are going to discuss, deliberate, or make a decision, even if that decision is no decision. We do have an obligation, I think, to make that sooner. And I'll be honest, not even just for the parents and the families, definitely for the students, so they know. But we also have some staffing obligations I think we need to consider as well. So waiting till the end of August, a week before school starts, is just a little asinine to me, honestly, from a logistics perspective. But also if there are families that are trying to weigh their decision, whether they stay or don't, hate to see them leave. However, we want to give them ample time to acclimate their children and their family to a different schedule, different school system, whatever that's going to be. So I agree. I can make myself as available as possible as well, whether that is that we, stick with, at minimum, I would say by the August 11th meeting. But if we are able to coordinate prior to that, something special, I'm more than open to that. To speak to your suggestion, Chuck, about a special subcommittee, I'll be honest with you, I think that this is a big enough topic that we all need to weigh in collectively everything. And I don't think it's something that we need a small few opinion to guide what we decide. And then on top of that, unfortunately, we're down to 6. So if three meet and then, the rest of us meet separately, we're short pressed on time on a sensitive and financial decision that I think we all need to be just as invested.
And I would agree, we're going to bring on a new board member that will have to weigh in on this topic. And so we need to make sure they're up to speed as well, to be fair. So
Maybe we should have a meeting sooner than of the whole board in the next week or two. I'm all for it. I just was trying to speed things up so I can help the public out. Yeah.
I also want to add that I think we need, like Carrie mentioned before, there is some due diligence that we need to do. I don't think this is a rushed decision, but it's an important decision. So I think we need to balance and weigh, and that will be part of our deliberation, whether we feel that we've gotten enough information and feedback and had enough time to make a decision that does impact so many, but I will be opposed to rushing it too quickly, though. That I will say.
I've never done this, so I'm not sure I have the wording correctly, but would it be possible to put forward a motion that says we will have this at least decided whether or not we're going to do anything this year by August 11th?
You can, but we all have to agree to that. I mean, you can motion anything you want to motion.
I absolutely would like to put forward that motion that says we will have this figured out, what we're doing, be it nothing or be it something, by August 11th.
is there support for that?
I would support, but it's just vague. I don't know, where we're at with it, Jack. Does that make sense if you want to rephrase it?
I will put.
So Ben, is that something that's doable for you?
Yes.
Okay. So knowing that, is there support? I'm not hearing support.
I support. I'll support it. I want to move on. I want to get this addressed somehow. I don't even know if that's possible. I don't think we should do anything now because it's too late in the year. We're already into the summertime. We're talking, this is June 23rd. School starts at the end of August. And Alicia's right. I don't want to rush things neither, but I'm obligated to the public to do something. And now we bring this up and we got 2 months. I don't even think 2 months is enough to give somebody notice if I was living in the community.
Can I ask?
So I don't know.
So we have a motion and we
actually-
have support?
Chuck would like to readdress the motion.
I'll readdress the motion. I'll readdress it right now, put everybody on the spot. I'm not trying to do anything. I make a motion that we keep Gaines Elementary open through the 21-22 year so we can figure this out and try to, not rush things.
Support.
Any comments or questions?
My comment is that we are currently in the public comment section of our agenda, and we still have public that want to speak. So I think when we get, I think at the point of that, we can add more board.
I'd like to speak. Charles Malky, 5350 Chinmaya Drive, Swartz Creek, Michigan.
Chuck, I'm sorry, you're out of order. And we do have someone that was sitting in the audience that was.
And I didn't get to finish what I had to say either. So I think we are in public comment section. We need to open that to our public still. And then if we have more potential motions or discussions from the board, we can add that at that point, when that is complete.
All right. With that, I will ask if you would be willing to retract your motion? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Everybody good? So now, in all fairness to our public, if you would like to address the board, please state your name and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. And I apologize, I'm going to pass the gavel temporarily to Mr. Sapanek so that I can,
Well, then I'll start talking. Don't start my timer yet. Okay, Melissa Neal, Gaines, Michigan. I live in the village. First question, not even relevant to Gaines. Do you have to, can you work at the school district and sit on the board?
No.
No. I like my job, darn it. Okay. So when you presented at Gaines last week, you presented your numbers, which were great. One of the numbers you presented was that we ran a deficit of $22,000 last year. That model that you showed was for a hypothetical last year, $22,000 deficit. Last year during COVID, excuse me, I have allergies, we were unable to rent out the gym. So that was a lost revenue. I am curious what would have been brought in with the rental of the gym if we would have had that. Would we have had a $22,000 deficit with being able to rent the gym out, which we do normally probably 5 to 6 days a week, we rent out that gym. So that was not able to do during COVID. That could be somewhere where we offset that $22,000. You guys are talking about emotion, and thank you all, the ones that came, Chuck, Jessica, Ben, to the meeting, whether intentional or not intentional, and this is not from me, it's from our residents. They felt it spoke volumes that the other members were not there. I understand it was a short notice meeting. They don't necessarily take that into the question. They take that as they've been trying to close us for years. They didn't even bother to show up to come see what we had to say. Just telling you what the residents have said to me. If you're talking about making a decision this year or this August about the school, we have talked, and the residents brought up, make a commitment not to close that school for 2 years, for 3 years. See what happens. Because as much as you guys have not talked about closing this school, the residents of Swartz Creek still do. We have new members that moved into our school, into our Gaines Village this year, 3, 4 new families that moved in, and they said, oh, we're probably going to not go there because we've heard that that school's closing. That's not from you guys. That's from the residents. But without a guarantee, and to come out and publicly say, listen, we are not, as a board, closing this school for 3 years. You have our guarantee on that. You have our guarantee. The district still talks about it. Your residents still talk about it. And they're still afraid to send their kids there because it's still a conversation had in the back. It's still the back of the room conversation. So I think you really need to put that out there. We are not closing Gaines for 2 to 3 years. We're not. We promise you. We're staying open. Bring your kids. If those numbers increase, then you know that the school is not going to close. In district school of choice, I had, other than the person that Karen brought up, I had that person and 3 other people come to me and say, listen, I was at Gaines in 1920. They moved the borders. Now I have to go to a different school. Yes, they offered me busing. I can't get my children to that bus stop because I'm at school. The bus used to pick my kids up at my house. Now I have to get them to a bus stop that's 3 or 4 blocks away, and I can't do that. I'm not sending my kid to walk first thing in the morning or last thing in the evening to walk home. My kid's in 2nd, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade. So yes, you do offer a busing option, but it's not the busing option they've had previous. That's an option that they have to take their kids somewhere else to get there. So that's a dilemma for them. A lot of people can't do that. That's not fair when they've already been offered the past 2, 3, 4, 5 school years that kid is picked up at their driveway, and now they have to go 2 or 3 4 blocks away to catch a bus. That's not an option for some parents that work. Gym rental, bus guarantee, not closing. I work at Gaines Elementary. So the numbers that I see at our school right now, we are sitting at about 122. I've done some surveys throughout the community, and the numbers that I see coming into the 21-22 school year, still low, but I'm looking at about 135, 140 from the people that I have surveyed and the families that are coming in, that are moving to the village, that are registering their kids, that are having kindergartners that are coming, that quite honestly are on the fence to find out whether you're going to be open or not next year, because they don't want to send their kid to kindergarten if it's going to close in 2 years. So again, comes in that guarantee. If you want your parents and that school to thrive, you need to give them something. You need to give them a guarantee. You do. You do. And as a business owner in that village, the last thing we need is an empty building. The last thing we need is an empty building. And if you ever chose to let employees sit on the board, I'll be there. I would love to sit on the board with you guys. And if you have any questions about villagers and residents, what they think, all of you pretty much probably know how to get a hold of me. Get a hold of me. All the residents, somebody I think told you that at the meeting, they go to me for a lot of things. I try to be level-headed and come with an open mind to most all things. And the residents come and they ask questions, and I want to be able to answer them. So if you have information or you want information, contact me. Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay. I would like to suggest that we pull forward our comments and questions from the board to continue the conversation that we were having before we go into our closed session for negotiations. And with that, I would open to my board members.
All right, just to start off, I'd like to put forward a motion right now that says we will not close Gaines Elementary for the 21-22 school year, and we will have a decision on what we are doing with it by March 2022.
I support that.
Any comments or questions? I'm going to ask a question of our superintendent. Is that a reasonable expectation?
Absolutely. I said this at the meeting when I was out at Gaines. The best time to talk about this is when we're doing well, and we're doing well. So, if it is absolutely running a drain on our financial resources, there's no question about that. That's not the only reason to make a decision. And if the decision was we want to get more efficient, we need to do that, we want to try and make a decision sooner than later, we can do that. But if we are going to hold for a year and make a decision in March, that's fine too. And the reason why it's good to talk about it when you're doing well is because you have that latitude, you have that opportunity. If the circumstances were different, I might be telling you need to make a decision now. And that's not the situation we're in, because we've had some success financially. So anything that this board decides is feasible, we will execute it and make it work.
Okay. Any other comments?
I think 2 months notice is not enough time, for the residents to prepare for what's going to happen again. I agree with Jack. I think just make a decision in March. I know that's kind of kicking the can down the road, but I think we'll have more preparation. And we didn't really have much of a chance to talk about this. I mean, it's been a short window. And I think this will give us a bigger window to discuss it, to look at it, to evaluate it, to hear the residents. I plan on being at the next meeting. I couldn't be at the last one, but I plan on being at the next one. But that'll give us more time. I don't like rush decisions. And I think if we hold off to March and re-examine, reevaluate, maybe things will be better all around and give us more information anyway.
I'm going to move forward with continuing with the meeting on the 19th as planned. I mean, obviously, if this board decides to vote in favor of that resolution, then I will have that information to share with them as well. But, we can make happen whatever it is the board wants to make happen.
So I would encourage this board to ask the hard questions. This is not an easy topic. Some of us have been through it before, and the community's been through it before. But ask the hard questions, ask for the data, listen to our community, but also we have to be good fiduciaries and consider that. I would also ask the community of Gaines to look hard at an option for a community center. And I am willing to share with anyone links to a community center in my hometown of Beaverton, Michigan, that they used a very low utilized school, and they renovated it. It was my middle school, and it's a jewel. And so just something to look at as a model for something that can be done, and it educates the community, it keeps them active, and it provides a lot of services. So just look at different options similar to that so that the board isn't doing this on their own. And so I think that's my challenge back to everyone sitting here and out into the community is what can we do together? Because this shouldn't just be a Gaines thing. This is Swartz Creek. We're all Swartz Creek. And so let's figure out a way to do this together. And with that, I am going to ask, Alicia, go ahead.
Wanted to comment, actually, a little bit in response to Melissa. First of all, thank you for this motion, and I appreciate the rethinking and the rephrasing of that suggestion. I think that was a really good proposal put forward. I want to echo and agree with Ben that I think this is the right time that we start thinking about this, because it is a hard thing. It's been on our radar for a long time. It's something we bring up and evaluate often. We are in a position where we are okay. We had just had our budget conversation. With that, then, I'm going to respond to what Melissa brought forward with the request of the community for a guarantee. Again, we revisit that budget multiple times throughout the year and annually. And in all honesty, a lot of it is set predicting. And if this last year taught us anything, is that we seriously can't predict the future. And we can all hope and want and plead for people to come to our community, to build homes, to bring their children, to enroll their children, but we don't know what's going to happen. And I think every person on this board has a fiduciary responsibility to consistently look at that. I appreciate the request and the desire to have a guarantee. I personally cannot make that guarantee for multiple reasons. One is that we do have the responsibility to all 3,600 enrolled students to look at our finances regularly, which means to hold a promise for the future is too difficult to make, I'll be honest, because we have to reevaluate those things as things change. Second to that, though, I also am not going to make a promise for somebody who may be sitting in my seat in the future. We are all not necessarily going to be here at the end of that promise. So all we can do with what we have been charged with is evaluate what we have in front of us. I can appreciate that. It's difficult to say that, but I'm just trying to be honest. I will also, again, and I think I said this at the last meeting, and I will echo Carrie as well, I charge the community, I charge this board, come up with some other suggestions. Problems are always presented, but if you don't have some solutions, then we are pressed to really look at the bottom line. But if we have some other thoughts and ideas, the more heads together, the better we can make this community. And then lastly, the concern about, inconveniences, bus stops, elementary boarders. I personally went through this. I built my home and expected my child to enroll in kindergarten literally down the street. And by the time I enrolled, things changed. We do not, if people are not aware, do not have an obligation to send your child to the school you think. Our obligation is to educate your children. Those borders and routes and all of those things are evaluated all the time, and that is for staffing, for busing, for safety, for whatever those need to be. And although they are an inconvenience, there are some expectations, I will say, out in the community that they're just not aware are just their own personal expectations that we do not have to uphold. So we are tasked with at least making decisions that make the most sense for the entire district and our business operations and our finances as the bottom line. So will say I will not take this lightly, and I am happy you brought that motion forward. I really think it was well presented, and appreciate the support as well, Chuck. But I do think we have a decision to make, and I agree, I think we should do it sooner. But holding us accountable, that's the other thing I wanted to add, is I like the concept of having a deadline, although that we may not be ready to make a decision at that point either, it's at least holding us accountable to something and communicating back to the public. So I'm done.
I very much appreciate everybody's comments, and I do appreciate the motion as well. And I think it quite honestly makes a lot of sense for us to not be rushed and to give some time. At that meeting, there are a couple things. I think quite honestly, there were quite a few members who, or community members of Gaines, who might not be all that supportive of a subcommittee based on past experience prior to us being on the board. And I think, as Alicia just said, that for each of us to take this very seriously, obviously, I'm not saying that we don't, but that a subcommittee might not be the best way to go about it, but for us to do our due diligence. And I think with what the residents as well had shared previously and some of the ideas and suggestions, and again, with future, not just July, but I'd like to think that we'll have other community conversations about what the future of Gaines, but some of those ideas, whether it's some of the advertising, and not just surveying Gaines families and obviously families, because I think I would like some information about how many Gaines families plan to, quite honestly, stay in Gaines, how many of them plan to transfer their kids at some point to Byron, and as well, the families in the rest of the Swartz Creek community, how many of them have a desire to go out to Gaines. We have an idea for this next year to see truly what kind of strength there is to continue to support Gaines. And during that time, and to Carrie's point, I think there can be some compromise there of having a community center and something that potentially grows other businesses out in that village. Who knows? But again, that's the idea of coming together and how do we get to this together. And one of the other things, I guess, with that as well, and to what Carrie said a moment ago, that I hope all of our residents realize, and I said this when I was out there, in my decision-making, it goes students first, staff second, and the community third. And those students are not just the students of that school, it is the students of the Swartz Creek District. And so I hope that our residents recognize that when in making a decision, it's not just about one area of our community, it's about the overall district. And in that working together, that, you know what, hopefully you trust us that we're working in the best interest of our students and our families, and we hope that our residents will help us to be the strongest school district that we can be, and that we can work together to do that. Thanks.
Thanks, Jessica.
Oh, and I will say one thing, because I know it was so important, and I would really like to hear the feedback. I already know I won't be here for the July meeting, so please pass that on to the residents that I would like to know about having that feedback. So, thanks.
Thank you again. All right, with that, we have a motion.
Carrie,
Yes.
just one more thing. Me and Jack both made motions, to prolong it, and I withdrew mine, but Jack never withdrew his original. Oh, you did? Okay, so, all right, so he withdrew that. So the motion is, can you read it back to us? You have it down there. You have it written down, so we're all on the same page?
I believe if it was not to close Gaines this school year and make a decision by March 2022.
Yep. Yes. That'll give us
That
plenty
was
of
it.
time. And that'll give us, put a little fire underneath us to make it a much better, attractive place to get the kids in there, more kids in there. Yeah, so that's it. All right, that's what I wanted to make
All
sure the
right.
motion's right. Thank you.
So we have that motion on the floor. We have a support, and we've had our comments. I'm going to ask you to do roll call, please.
Alicia Gardner.
Voting not to close and to be held accountable to the 22nd. Okay, I want to make sure I'm, yes.
Jessica Lenave.
Yes.
Jack Sayer.
Yes.
Carrie Germain.
Yes.
Chuck Melkey.
Yes.
Brian Sapanic.
Yes.
6 yes.
All right, the motion passes. That does not relieve us of our duties.
No.
And the work will begin now, right?
Yeah.
Can I
Okay.
comment to my fellow board members? Honestly, that was one of the best alternative compromise suggestions, and I really applaud everybody's thought and consideration in that. That was well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia, and I agree. Thanks, Jack and Chuck, for bringing that forward. Appreciate it. All right, we are,
If possible, I have one more comment.
okay, so we are still in
I am
board
so sorry.
comments and questions from the board.
I'm
You
sorry,
still are- you
I
still
gotta
have-
bring this up. So, in our policies, okay, policy 2504, section B2, this is this would be in reference to public comment at board meetings. Now, we talked about this in policy committee, and we're definitely talking about it again, but it says the following, it says each person's public comments are limited to 3 minutes, but may allow for 5 minutes if there are few people seeking to participate, and this can be changed via the president's discretion. I do not like this policy, and here's why. And it's not because it's the president's discretion. I don't like that it's so vague, okay? How many people is too many people to allow for 5-minute participation from the public? I think we should set an actual number to it, be it 3, 5, 4 minutes. We should set a number, and I don't think it should be changed unless we put in a specific number that says if this number of public participants seek to participate, then we edit it back down to 3. But I would like to just make it very clear that it does say that we may allow for 5 minutes if there are few people speaking. And at the last couple meetings, after we've adopted this policy, we have cut people off at 3 minutes before. And I just want to make this clear, not making a decision on it right now. This is definitely going to go into policy committee. However, I do want to bring that to the attention of the rest of the board that this policy says we allow for 5 minutes if there are few people. And we did cut someone off at 3 minutes. And I'm sorry to that person in the public that we did that to. That's all.
Just a quick comment. Tonight, Mrs. Neal spoke for almost 5 minutes. I didn't cut her off at 3. She had, I wanted to hear the rest of the story.
Good.
And we had very few people speaking anyway, so
Good.
it was a good compromise.
And I know, Jack, this is your first year, but we've done something similar in the past when someone is in the middle of their conversation or their comment. But we do have to be mindful. We've had a boardroom full of people as well. And so if we were to routinely allow 5 minutes, we would be here all night. And quite often when you have a full room or at least half a room of people, the comments become very similar. So that would also be at my discretion, because people could be saying the same thing over and over again. And we want to make sure that people have an opportunity to express their concerns. And it may be completely unrelated for the reason that all the people are there. So just so you know.
Yeah,
that.
and that's fine. I think we need to, maybe in policy committee, we need
Yeah.
to change this so that there is a standard, so that it's not just, it could be this, it could be that. No, I think we need to have an actual number to it, or we need to put an actual time limit on it, not saying 5 or 3, is what I'm saying. I think there just needs to be a standard.
And I would agree, we can take it to policy. All right. Thanks, Jack. Anyone else?
But be careful of somebody, Carrie, and you're well experienced, because I agree with you. We don't agree on too many things, but I agree with you on this. Is that, you give one person 5 minutes and then the other guy gets up or the other lady gets up and said, you gave them 5, so you know what I mean? So, and Jack is very young and I've been through this, and we have to be kind of careful of that, because I've seen boards in township meetings and city meetings and county meetings where then it just disrupts everybody and they get a little upset. So maybe a number is good on it, you know what I mean, in the future, but.
And
yeah.
try to be
So-
fair at the same time, because I want the public to have an opportunity to speak. Go ahead.
I would like to talk about something completely separate from that, if I may. And that is to thank Michelle Loader and all the staff that made graduation beautiful and wonderful this year. I would also like to acknowledge the passing of Buster on graduation day. And what a blessing when we as well talk about trauma-informed care to me. Like, I replied to Mr. Brown about all the healing that he and Buster had, I believe, had not only with our students, but with our staff. And quite honestly, as a parent, always seeing them, and it just brought joy. And what a blessing to be able to have that in our district. And I just want to thank the staff for allowing them to come in, and to thank them for all the blessings that they have been into our community. And I look forward, hopefully, I hear Luna may be coming into our schools. And saving the best for last, I want to thank Mike Ahern for the blessing that he is and has been to this district and this community and to me. And he's just awesome. And I just want to publicly say that. And whoever is close to him, give him a great big hug. That's it.
One more comment.
Go ahead.
I thought, and I just want to say that I was so impressed by the graduation ceremony. The weather was perfect, the sound, the stage, the setup, and I just, it was just, I hope we do that every year, as long as weather permitting, but it was beautiful.
I absolutely agree. And it was great to have all of our board members there too. So anyone else? All right. Okay. I want to thank Chris for all your work. Thanks for presenting tonight. We couldn't do what we do to support all of the administrators, the staff, the students without your vision, your leadership in our financial world. So thank you so much. Okay.
I do have one more, Carrie. So ditto to everybody. I won't say the same things. It was a fantastic graduation. But I do want to add thank you to the community for supporting that bond that put that facility together that we can start to use in the future. But I also want to do a public woo-hoo. We're done. We made it. Comment to the teachers, the staff, the administration, every single person that works within this district or supported this district, the parents who became teachers, the guardians, the whoever did everything we could this last year, bar none, different than anything we've ever seen or done. We made it. We came out financially ahead. Thank you, Chris. And we're slotted to continue to be an amazing district moving forward. We have learned a lot. We have seen a lot. And it's made it a much more different job sitting up here, for sure. But we came together as a community, and I think our kids have really excelled, and we've seen a lot of growth and a lot of good things come from what started off as a really bad thing. So I think we just all need to focus on the positive moving forward and enjoy a summer break for those of you that get to be off. Just look forward to coming back for the fall. That's it.
Thank you. All right. With that, we have need to go into closed session for the purposes of negotiation per OMA 15.268, Section 8C. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Alicia, and I think I heard Brian. Chuck?
Support.
Oh, okay. I thought that was Brian whispering over here. All right. Any comments or questions?
Can we have a 5-minute potty break before?
Yes, we will.
Thank you.
With that, I'm going to ask Sue to do a roll call vote, please. And when we're done with negotiation discussion, we will come back for adjournment, but go ahead. Sue?
Brian Sapanik,
Yes.
Chuck Melkey,
Yes.
Carrie Germain,
Yes.
Jack Sayer,
Yes.
Jessica Lenave,
Yes.
Alicia Gardner.
Yes.
All right, and with that, we are going to go, it passes, we go into closed session. We're going to take a 5-minute comfort break, and we will go to the conference room for our session. Thank you, Zach. We are back in session at 9:12, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, so who's first? Alicia and Jack. Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks to my fellow board members. I appreciate all that you do. I hope that those of you who are going on vacation soon can completely disconnect and enjoy your family, your friends, and like you've never enjoyed them before, because we're all way behind in doing that. And I want to just thank all of you. And thank you, Zach, for your patience. I hope you're able to watch Netflix or something while we're gone. But thanks to the community, and we will talk to you again in July. Thank you.